Welcome all and good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's Adabri webinar. My name is Matt Holdstock and I'm an Extension Specialist at the Adabri RI, and we'll be running today's webinar. In today's session, the webinar will be presented by a panel of experts and practitioners and will cover a range of sustainability practices, including global sustainability policies, credentials to access international markets, the latest from Sustainable Winegrowing Australia, and insights from grower and winemaker's perspective. In the spirit of reconciliation, the Adabri would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. I'd also like to acknowledge Wine Australia for providing the funding and support for the webinar program via the Adabri's Extension and Communication Project. Before we jump in and make a start, a couple of quick reminders to anyone who is new to the Adabri webinar program. If you'd like to provide a comment or ask a question, please click on the Q&A button on the Zoom toolbar. Type in your question, click to send it through. We'll be holding the Q&A session at the end of each presentation today, but feel free to send in your questions at any stage. A reminder also that this session is being recorded and a link will be sent through to you later via the Adabri's YouTube channel. We'd also like to collect some data on your knowledge on this topic today. So you should see a one question survey pop up on your screen asking you to rate how much you know about sustainability and integrating this into your business. If you could please rate your knowledge on this topic on a scale of 0 to 10 right now, with 0 being nothing and 10 being an expert in this field. At the conclusion of today's webinar and after the Q&A session of the last speaker, we'll also prompt you again with another single question to establish your knowledge on the topic after the webinar. And again, you'll be asked to rate your knowledge on a scale of between 0 and 10. For anyone who's just joined, welcome to today's webinar topic. It is integrating sustainable wine growing into your vineyard and winery business and how to reap the rewards. And it's a great pleasure to welcome one of our first presenters today is Anna Hooper from Australian Grape and Wine. Anna joined the national peak body for the wine sector, Australian Grape and Wine, after a long career as a grower and producer of wine in Australia and overseas. Her enduring interest in sustainability has seen her receive several awards, including the South Australian Rural Women's Award in 2013, which provided the opportunity to research the drivers of leadership and sustainability amongst wine producers. Anna has been a director on a number of private and government boards relating to wine and natural resource management, including Australian Vineyards, where she later became the CEO. Anna now advocates for continual improvement in both economic and environmental policy and assists the sector in strategies that improve resilience and preparedness for threats. Anna, if you're ready to make a start, I'll get you to share your screen and I'll hand over to you.
I just have to wait for you to stop sharing, I think. Okay, thanks, Matt, for the introduction. I'm just going to start very briefly talking to you a little bit about Australian Grape and Wine and who we are. We're the Peak Association for Grape and Wine Producers, and our role is to support your businesses through advocacy and leadership. You can find out more information about us on the website or by reading the slide, but I also just want to take the opportunity to quickly point out that we exist because of voluntary membership, so please consider joining if you are not already a member. Today I'm here to provide some insights into the complex and demanding new world of ESG and sustainability. ESG, for those who are new, is environmental social governance. It's slightly nuanced from other terms such as sustainability in the fact that it focuses on understanding how resilient a business is to environmental and social issues for the primary purpose of informing investors. And certain businesses are encouraged to report certain information, and for this will likely likely to be required to do so by law, which is what's called mandatory disclosures, and I'll touch on that later. Globally, government philosophies behind this are that better information will optimise the flow of money in the economy to businesses who can adapt in response to the global pressures on our environment. And this is because a huge amount of the economy relies on nature. Think medicine, fibre, and of course, agriculture. These generate transition risk for companies that have an impact on or a reliance upon natural capital, are high emitters, or are vulnerable to the effects of climate change, for example. Changes in the ESG landscape are occurring more quickly and more aggressively than what we've seen in the past, and we're seeing more and more related regulations around the world, including requirements for public companies to disclose information. Meanwhile, digital transformation technologies are driving a democratisation of information and placing growing pressure on smaller businesses to provide information. There are requirements for supply chain due diligence, primarily to avoid leakage of bad practices to other businesses or to other nations with less stringent laws. So this has the potential to make it harder for us to export. Think about certain markets' overly cautious approach to chemical residue limits that we're already seeing as a problem today, or carbon border adjustment mechanisms already in force for some sectors in the EU. And the future could see bans on exporting products labelled as certified sustainable if our practices are not up to the importing country's standard. It's quite possible. And all this is fueled by a post-pandemic landscape of growing protectionism. Australia is signatory to multiple global agreements relating to the environmental protection and human rights, and these drive our domestic regulations. Of most significance are things like the Paris Agreement on climate change, but there are many more international agreements, and you can find the more environmentally focused ones on DEQ's website if you're interested to know more in the links there. As I touched on, new Australian regulations are almost certainly coming and will, in the first instance, require mandatory reporting or disclosures, as they're called, on climate change risks and opportunities, and these are likely to be phased in as of 2025. There are also proposals for other types of environmental information, such as impacts on natural capital. Close to 400 organisations from 64 jurisdictions around the world have already committed to climate-related reporting. But what will unfold in the next decade is not entirely clear, and I've asked for lots of people's views on this topic, and I'm frequently met with the same answer: well, that's the million-dollar question. My prediction is that the sophistication of data collection and sharing will be a strong feature in the changes we see. Look up EU's new digital product passport as an example. There's a lot on these slides, but I will say they are available to view later, so I'll just summarise this one quite quickly. Supply chain due diligence requirements, these are in place around the world and they're not new. Our Modern Slavery Act is an example, and that's been in place since 2018. In Europe, where they have a passion for government intervention and regulation, they've already extended their supply chain due diligence directive to go beyond human rights to also include how companies monitor negative impacts of their value chain on the environment or supply chain, and another potential trade impediment. To look back on the history, there's been many advancements in sustainability and corporate social responsibility, and most have started in the finance sector. We saw the first move by the finance sector to promote responsible investing back in the 70s with socially responsible investing. And then in the 80s came a growing prominence of sustainability in financial reporting, and the triple bottom line found its way into our common language. And now we are seeing a much more aggressive approach of governments mandating reporting requirements. So whether it be to meet the needs of investors, regulators, markets, consumers, or any other interested party, we rely on standards which are used by auditors or regulators to check for conformance. And many of you will be familiar with the Fresh Care standards, which underpin Sustainable Winegrowing Australia reporting. In the case of Fresh Care, this is done by an accredited auditor, and as the standards are voluntary, there is no compliance linked to government regulation. But then on a global scale, we have much broader versions attempting to define a multi-sectoral global common language for sustainability reporting. And this slide shows some of the major ones and how they all sort of influence each other. Widely accepted international disclosures are the most widely accepted disclosures are contained in the International Finance Reporting Standards, sustainability standards S1 and S2, which cover climate and non-climate related disclosures. There's also the SASB standards, which sit beneath as supporting standards for industry-specific disclosure requirements. There's 77 of these, including one for ag products and one for alcoholic beverages. And you can see that up in the top left-hand corner, and I've included a link there, which you might be interested in looking up. It provides instructions to businesses who legally must report, so large businesses, but it will guide how they manage their supply chain reporting obligations, covering things like percentage of product ingredients that are certified to a third-party environmental or social standard, and non-compliances or corrective actions that those partners have had, and even percentage of beverage ingredients sourced from regions with high or extremely high water stress, among others. So what will be the trickle-down effect of small business in the context of this new environment? Well, these standards claim to have been designed so companies of any size can apply them in a way that's scalable to their business and risk. But as we know, this invariably presents challenges for small producers. And we not only see this issue with our own fresh care, but we see it as much on a much larger scale with the very large businesses who have informed me that they even struggle to meet the requirements of the even larger businesses that they supply to. Companies are advised to focus on the items that are really matter or are material. So you might ask yourself, does ESG performance matter if you're one of 100 growers to supply a winery who might also be one of 100 wineries supplying a business that's caught up in the legislation? This remains to be seen, but reports are that even the major supermarkets in Australia are just starting to ask some hard questions of their suppliers. And then comes the question, will investors use this? How will investors use this information? Will they focus on the positives? I look for businesses exhibiting strong ESG credentials. Or they take more of a negative screening approach, potentially excluding entire sectors based on material negative impacts. Which brings me to the last topic, greenwashing. In a recent history, I'll just tell you about a little case that's just made history. Mercer Superannuation was accused of making a false statement on its website that its sustainability plus investment options excluded companies involved in fossil fuels, alcohol production, or gambling. And ASIC successfully filed civil penalty proceedings in the federal court where Mercer were found to have investments in companies involved in those industries despite the claim. So there's two messages here. One is that companies need to do what they say they do, but the other is that this particular fund chose to say that exclude alcohol from their sustainable investment fund in the first place. And I even know the owners of a small premium business that was subject to an ACCC corrective notice and lots of free media over what seemed like a very detailed specifics of how a claim was worded. And although no cases yet, unfortunately, even green certification systems have been tied up in various scandals due to certified organisations having been found non-compliant with environmental legislation or accused of making misrepresentations or simply making a product not perceived to be sustainable. For example, should a maker of coffee pods be certified under B Corp has been questioned. In any event, the message is that companies need to take care not to make claims they cannot substantiate, and ACCC has published guidance on green claims to help you avoid this type of risk. So in closing, the world has changed and continues to change. Many of the factors driving this change are well beyond our control, but it does pay to be on the front foot. And while I don't want to be dismissive of the pressure that ESG reporting is placing and the requirements for certification and audits are having on businesses, both large and small, those who approach these activities with the right attitude and see it as a value-generating exercise will gain more than those who treat it as merely a compliance exercise. So focus on how the information generated whilst going through the certification process generates and reveals opportunities to save money or increase demand, and use this as a basis for the action plans required for audit. And there have been studies showing links between environmental performance and profitability. So this is not a myth. And I haven't really gone into this topic to anywhere near the depth that it could have been gone into. But there are potential regulatory and policy changes that could have advantages for certain businesses as well, particularly for land managers. So it's a huge topic. I've not really done it justice can't really do it justice in 10 minutes, but I'm also more than happy to talk to people offline. and welcome any questions during the chat, and my email's here too, and yeah, happy to chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. That was great. Look, what we'll do is we'll gather up some questions and we'll put them as they come through a little bit later. So our next speaker today is Liz Shern. Liz is an independent wine business consultant who collaborates with wineries and industry partners to enhance their distribution, sales and marketing strategies. With more than 20 years of experience across various facets of the wine industry, Liz possesses a deep understanding of domestic and global distribution networks, trade marketing, export management, sales and portfolio management, and stakeholder relations. Liz leverages this wealth of knowledge to help her clients navigate challenges, optimize their operations, and achieve their business objectives more efficiently. Liz, if you're ready to make a start, I'll hand over to you. Just unmute, that's it.
Thank you so much, Matt. And thanks everyone. So today I'm just going to talk to you about who are arguably the market leaders in sustainability, the Swedish monopoly Systembolaget. I've had the pleasure of working with them during my time at, as European Export Manager at Negociants, and still continue to today in my consulting role. So firstly, just who are they, for those of you who are not familiar or don't currently work with them? Systembolaget are the the Swedish government-owned alcohol retailer. Over 80% of all alcohol sold in Sweden is sold through one of these monopoly stores. There's 450 of them. They also do have an online component. So the only retailer who exists in Sweden is Systembolaget. And the only way you can get your wine on the shelf is through winning a tender. And Marty described it, which I'll just steal her little a likeness to it, as the IKEA, but less chaotic. And you know, it does have that. It's very clean, organized, and I'll tell you later about a little bit about the marketing. You won't see any mess or advertising. So what do the Swedish consumers think about this? Well, there's consumer surveys put out every year, and 3 out of 4 Swedes support the monopoly and actually rate it really highly. So Systembolaget's mission is to sell alcoholic beverages responsibly while offering first-class service. So it is a retail monopoly not driven by profit or sales, but rather based on Sweden's restrictive alcohol policy, which aims to limit the harmful effects of alcohol. So limiting the negative effects, which is my second point there, of alcohol, is about minimizing the impact on the environment, which is where the work with sustainability really comes into it, pre-consumption, all the way through to reducing the harmful effects of alcohol on others post-consumption. Again, I'll talk about how do they do this. So firstly, limiting the availability of alcohol through the time that the stores are open and the number of stores that exist. Systembolaget is not about maximizing profits or promoting sales, so they enforce this at all levels by not measuring the stores on their sales volumes, very different to Australian businesses. Regulated marketing means a number of things that are really different to Australian retailers. So think about, so communications are based on the needs of consumers, but must not contribute to increased alcohol consumption. There are no promotions or bonus offers in stores, so you won't see any shelf talkers apart from the sustainability ones, which I'll talk about later. And advertising is very limited, even down to the point I had a situation where we just won a new tender, and the customer said, how come we're on the bottom shelf? If you win a tender, you don't get placed on one particular spot in every store. You'll get placed randomly in every store. So you may be on the top shelf at eye level in one store and then on the bottom shelf in another store. They're very much about not, you can't pay for a better position, or you can't go into store and move it up. So Systembolaget has also released a teenage phrase book, which is a publication that is to support parents on how to speak to their kids about alcohol. They've even released a drama series on TikTok about alcohol. They take part in a lot of alcoholic research and publish this openly on their website. And lastly, they've set really ambitious sustainability goals, which is what we're here about today. And their biggest goal in this area is to reduce their entire value chain impact on the environment by half by half by 2030. So I mentioned earlier about those shelf talkers that can say sustainability. The 3 criteria for a wine to be able to get that, it's that it firstly has to have an environmentally certified cultivation and production. So this means that it has 1 or more of the environmental certifications that Systembolaget has approved. Now, the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia certification is one of those, and that is the only one for Australian producers that they can use. So if you have that, that's the first tick. The second one, the social responsibility in cultivation and production. And this really ties into Anna's slide that she just mentioned about the supply chain due diligence. So pretty much if you adhere to Australian work laws, you will tick this box. Lastly, packaging with a lower climate footprint, which means either something in a bag-in box, a PET can, returnable glass, but it has to be a lightweight glass, so anything under 420 grams. If you have all of those 3, you can get that sustainability tag on shelf. So how do you win? This is just a snippet of the latest tenders that have been released from the monopoly. This goes out to, is released in Sweden, and then the distributors in Sweden pass it on to their partners. So I've just highlighted a couple of things. It's very small. On the very left column, it's titled "What the wine" that they're actually looking for, and they've called out twice on this one for sustainably certified specifically. Then the fourth column over is the packaging column, and they've specifically asked for lightweight bottles, 420 grams, or PET bottles. The one above is actually they're asking for a can. It's becoming rarer for the Swedish monopoly to release things in a standard bottle unless it's quite a premium offering. So just some current wins for Australia and some of my clients personally has been the Ginger Prince cans, which is from Fowles, a sparkling white and a rosé bubbles, and most recently a Moscato. Yeah, all in cans, and we'll be proudly displaying the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia trust mark as of this year. So they will get that tick with that shelf talker. Another more recent one is Stars Reach Good Sense Grenache from the Riverland, and you can see already they're able to put that trust mark on the back. And just a little quote from Sheridan Elm, who and her views on being sustainable, says there, being sustainable winemaking certified has had an impact on access to new export markets. There's a growing awareness in the trade domestically, and the more that jump on board, the more we can educate the consumer domestically. So she's a big advocate for it. And my experience with all wineries who I talk about and say, you know, are you sustainably wine-grown certified or a member? The ones that are say yes, and it's sort of just we do it because we think it's the right thing to do. So it's very positively thought about from those who I've spoken about it to, and I do encourage you to do it from a sales perspective as well, hopefully. So again, a lot to squish into 10 minutes, but hopefully I've done it justice. More than happy to answer any questions and extend the conversation further if you want to send me an email or give me a call. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Liz. Some great stuff there. Hadn't seen that can. Look, our next speaker, there hasn't been any questions come through. There has been a question come through on Sustainable Winegrowing Australia, and I might get Marty to address that after the presentation. So our next presenter is Marty Longbottom from the Australian Wine Research Institute. Marty began her career in the wine industry, helping to establish her family's vineyards in Pathway, South Australia, back in the early 90s. Marty is a viticulturist, and her focus over the past 14 years has been on the wine industry sustainability projects. Marty is the General Manager of the Adbri's Industry Development Support Team, and as part of that role, she manages the technical and membership aspects of the Australian wine industry's sustainability program, Sustainable Winegrowing Australia. Marty, I can see you're ready to go there, so I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, so I am just going to give you a little update on Sustainable Winegrowing Australia today. And for those of you who may be newer to the program, a quick reminder on how the program works. So Sustainable Winegrowing Australia is the Australian wine industry's national sustainability program. It's a voluntary program, and what members do is annually they report through their business metrics, and they also go through a self-assessment workbook of their practices and processes within their business. And then those who undertake certification and go on to be a certified member, they undergo a third-party audit that happens once every 3 years to become certified members of the program. And once they are certified, they have access to the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia trust mark that you can see here on the slide. It's important to acknowledge that we do work in partnership with Australian Grape and Wine. So you heard from Anna a few minutes ago, and we also work closely with Wine Australia. So Australian Grape and Wine takes care of the policy and advocacy issues around sustainability. Wine Australia supports the program with its communications and marketing for the program. And AWI, we look after the technical aspects of the program. So we do work together on it. So Sustainable Winegrowing Australia membership has grown significantly in the last few years. So currently in our membership, we have over 1,400 members nationally, and those members are in 55 of our 65 wine regions. The members represent 51% of Australia's vineyard area, and in vintage 23, 71% of fruit that was harvested in Australia was processed in member wineries. So that's the membership. And if we think then around those who've gone through the certification process, so 60% of our members are now certified. And that represents almost a third of Australia's vineyard area that's now undertaken that third-party certification process. I mentioned the growth in the program, and you can see this figure here represents the growth over the last 4 years. You can see, especially in the last 2 years, that growth has really significantly increased. And if we break that down to the members of the program who are not yet certified, so that's represented by the darker green part of these bars, and those who are certified, what you can see here is that in the last 2 years, there's been a big increase in the proportion of members who have become certified. Now, the drivers of this are varied, but hopefully you've already gained some insight from what Anna's talked about and Liz just now around those market drivers that are there and are quite strong now. Every year we put together the data that we collect from our members, and in March this year we released our third impact report. So this was data collected in the 23 season. I think the difference in the impact report, if you've been following these over the last couple of years, is that this most recent impact report was really aimed at the retail sector. So the messaging in there was really aimed at retail. And the focus of this was around certification and the trust mark, and also the achievements we've made in the program, not just in the last year, but since we started and launched the trust mark in 2020. So if you haven't yet had a look at that report, I'd encourage you to download it. You can download it for free from our website. So it was released back in March, but I think it's really important to acknowledge there was a lot of media that occurred straight after this. And so a couple of the really popular things that happened, there were a couple of podcasts that were recorded just immediately after that impact report. And these have had a lot of people tuning in and listening to those. So if you haven't had a listen to any of the podcasts, I'm happy to share those links with you later on. But really, that if you want to get an overview in a short snapshot of what was in this impact report, either download it or listen to the podcasts. If you do have a look at the report on page 9, there's a one-pager that really just highlights across the different elements of the program, the growth in the last few years since 2020. I did just quickly want to highlight the improvements in waste management. What you can see up there in the top right-hand corner is that 4.5 times more members are taking action to reduce waste to landfill. So that is that they're diverting their waste to other different methods of managing that waste, whether it's recycling or reuse. And the other one down here is that almost 5 times more members are prioritising energy efficiency than when we started tracking these numbers back in 2020. And this one is really important as we track towards our zero emissions target. I don't want to spend any more time talking about the actual data and performance of members of the program because we've got some other, I guess, more qualified people on the ground who are going to follow me and talk about what they've been doing in their vineyards. But moving on, I mentioned that the real focus has been on the trust mark, and I did want to highlight the trust mark and the adoption of the trust mark that's occurred since 2020. So just for those of you who are not so familiar with it, the trust mark, if you see it on a wine label, it really does represent that the grapes have come from a certified vineyard and the wine's made in a certified winery. So, and I think the number probably you're all waiting for is this one here. The trust mark now is appearing on over 1,100 wine labels. So chances are next time you're in a bottle shop, if you pick up a wine, you may end up seeing that trust mark on it. So please look out for it and know what it represents. There's another page in the impact report. This is a snapshot from that one. And I think this is another important number. Since launching the trust mark in 2020, we now have the equivalent of 96.1 million bottles that qualify to have the trust mark on it. And I think it's really important to acknowledge, and Liz kind of picked this up in her presentation before, it's around consumers becoming more aware of certification marks, and some of that's being led from retail. But the number you can see down in the bottom left-hand corner of your slide at the moment, that 53% of global wine consumers are really looking for some kind of recognised trust mark to demonstrate the sustainability credentials of products. I thought I'd show you a couple of examples of how people are using the trust mark. So we are seeing a lot of these trust marks on regular wine bottles, but people are expanding and exploring the use on packaging as well. So this is a box that's used by Gill Estate from the Murray Valley, and they're using the trust mark there quite prominently in the middle, and they've printed it in green, which is not common, but it's a great use of the trust mark. So we applaud them for that. And I think the other one that I'm noticing a lot is more use of the trust mark in social media. So there's just a couple of examples of certified members. Often we're seeing this when people are newly certified, people making announcements about their certification, which is great, and we absolutely encourage that. And just so that you know, some of these social media assets are freely available to members. Just a couple of examples here. It's not just for the certified members too. Like this one here can be used by any of the members just to demonstrate that you're part of the program. But then and this one here is also for members. Even though you're not certified, you can use this one to just let people know that you're on that journey towards becoming certified. And if you're looking for these socials assets, when you log in and have a look at your dashboard in your Sustainable Winegrowing Australia membership, down here where this arrow is pointing, this is where the link is to access any of those images if you want to use them in any of your promotions. And we do strongly encourage you to do that. Another thing we've been working on is a number of grower and winery case studies. So if you haven't checked into the case study page on the website, you can access them directly up at the top right-hand side there. There's over 12 different case studies there from across the different regions who are participating in Sustainable Winegrowing Australia. So I'd encourage you to do that. I think the best thing about these case studies is that they are real stories, and they're really picking up on producers who are using their data well to tell a story about identifying an area of their business where they haven't been performing well, and using their data to find a way that they can change their practices, implement something new, and make improvements, save money, and create efficiencies in their business. So for those of you who are not yet members of the program, if you're looking and wondering how to become a member, the most important thing is to sign up now. So we're right in the middle of the renewal period at the moment. We've got a couple of weeks to go to the end of August. So I'd encourage you to sign up. It costs nothing to sign up and have a look around inside the program. Just go to the website. The link you can see down the bottom of my screen at the moment links you to the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia YouTube channel. If you go there, there's 4 really short videos. They're only a minute or two each. And these are really simple instructions on how to get in, how to log in, how to put your data in, and how to complete the workbook. So I'd encourage you to go and have a look at those as well. If you're already a member and you're looking to become certified, if you're looking to get access to the trust mark for Vintage 25, some of these dates are becoming quite critical. Remember, you do need to have your membership done by the end of this month. If you haven't yet gone to a certification workshop, you'll need to do that before the 14th of September. That is if you want to qualify for Vintage 25. If you're looking for those workshops, the link at the bottom of the page here will take you to an expression of interest form. Put your name on that form, and then you'll receive all the updates of when those workshops are available. AWI is only one of the providers who can provide these workshops, but we know who that network is. And if we can't provide you with the training, we can certainly put you in touch with someone else who may be able to do it. And then the last step is make sure you get your audit done before vintage. So once you've had your audit done, you can let us know that you've got a certificate and we can transfer you into a certified member. Also be aware there's a lot of people lining up for audits at the end of this year. So get in early. There can be a wait time of up to 3 months to get those audits. Now, if you're already a certified member and you're listening, I just do want to remind you as well, it's important for you to also maintain your membership. Remember, audits only happen once every 3 years, but the reason we're able to have triennial audits as opposed to other things like organics and food safety, which have audits every single year. So the reason we can have them triennially is because in the interim years, you're maintaining your membership with Sustainable Winegrowing Australia. So you're reporting your metrics, going through your self-assessment, which is the same as an internal audit. So certified members, make sure you do that. Review and maintain all your documents in the interim years and make sure you get your audit done in 3 years' time. So thanks very much. If you've got any questions about the program, the best way to follow up with us at the moment is email. So helpdesk@awi.com.au. We've got a lot of calls coming in at the moment, so it will be much quicker if you email us. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Marty. There's been a couple of questions come through. I might just take that opportunity to ask a couple of questions while we can. They are Sustainable Winegrowing Australia related. So Marty, just a quick question. How is due diligence being used to protect brand Sustainable Winegrowing Australia against greenwashing and slavery claims for grapes and wine being purchased below the cost of production that are using the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia Trust mark? There's another question I think might have been related to Liz, but I'm not sure whether Liz is still here. If she is, that'd be great to her to jump in. Do Systembolaget require wine grape growers to be profitable to gain certification?
I could have a go, Matt. So thanks, Jeremy, for your question. And I know we've talked about this a number of times, and it is a concern of ours that if, unfortunately, we can't really play a part in those grower-winery relations with regards to how much growers are paid for their grapes. What we have done this year, though, is introduce into the workbook a new question around participation or being a signatory to the Code of Conduct. And perhaps, Anna, if you want to jump in and say, make a comment. But what we have done is at this stage, it's more around making sure that wineries are aware of the Code of Conduct and what the requirements are, with a view that probably next year it will be a requirement of certification to be a signatory, at least to the Code of Conduct. Anna, did you want to add anything else?
I'll probably just add the fact that modern slavery doesn't low wages alone aren't modern slavery. Modern slavery is forced labour, bonded labour, child labour, etc. And I've asked myself this question many times and discussed it with various people, and I think we're a free economy, and placing restrictions on commercial dealings is not something we generally do in Australia unless there is a market power imbalance issue. Clearly, there is a market power imbalance issue in certain situations in the wine industry, but in the absence of a mandatory code, we rely on our voluntary code of conduct, which for signature, when it comes to signatories, I think works quite well. And as Marty said, there's a likely move to introduce that as a requirement of SWA. But yeah, when it comes to price, modern slavery, I think that's above and beyond what should be expected of Sustainable Winegrowing Australia.
Okay, there's probably another question here there's a couple that have similar themes, but there's probably another one down the bottom that's a little bit slightly different. What measures are in place to allow inclusivity for growers that are challenged by literacy?
That's another good question. We have a number of measures in place for other challenges. I think I'd encourage anyone who does have these challenges to contact us. We're more than happy to provide support from our end, but I guess it's more just let us know what the challenges are, and we're happy to help.
Okay, what we might do now, look, we're sort of almost halfway through today's webinar. So what we thought we'd do is we're just going to take a quick break and pause for 2 minutes. And what I'd like you to do is just take a couple of minutes to look outside your window, stretch your legs, have a drink of water, and maybe think about some of the things that you've seen so far today. And if anything comes of mind, and maybe write down 2 or 3 things that A, you might want to action within your business, or B, something you'd like to ask as a question whether it's for your business internally or externally. And as I said before, if you do have a question, pop it in the Q&A and we'll see whether we can address that as we go through for the rest of the day. So I'll turn my camera off for 90 seconds and then we'll come back with our next speaker. Okay, welcome back. So now I'm just going to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Lucy Etheridge. Lucy is a farmer with a PR degree and Masters in Agribusiness. Lucy has spent 20 plus years working in the shiny side of the wine industry, sales, events, functions, marketing, and has returned to help run the family farm, Yarrawalla, in 2018. Yarrawalla grapes are grown to supply some of Australia's most respected wine companies and very occasionally for production into its own label. Lucy's also passionate about biodiversity and land protection for future generations. Lucy loves sharing knowledge and believes in staying curious to ensure that she is innovating within her own business and helping to support, inspire, and involve others to do the same. Lucy has a keen interest in consumer behaviour and a desire to ensure wine carries a story from the vine to the table, in particular giving grape growers a voice and a place in that story alongside the winemakers, marketers, sommeliers, sellers, and sippers. Okay, Lucy, I'll stop my audio and I'll hand over to you. If you share your screen for me. Right, over to you.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks for having me along today. Before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I make this presentation, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, the traditional owners of the many lands on which the Australian wine industry is grown. My name's Lucy Etheridge, and as Matt mentioned, I'm a farmer here in the Yarra Valley. We're a family-owned and operated business, and I've been in the wine industry for around nearly 30 years, I think now, and I've got a pretty keen interest to ensure that grape growers in particular are included in the story of how the vine finds its way to the table. So a little bit about our farm. We are a 500-acre property in Gruyere, in the heart of the Yarra Valley. We're a mixed farming business. We've got livestock, wine grapes, and also accommodation. The property's been in my family since the late 60s, and wine-wise, we're growing Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Most of it's still on its own roots, and we're beginning a bit of a replant program with phylloxera in the system here to ensure we've got some rootstock as well. So when I came back to the farm in 2018, I was fairly clear fairly quickly that I needed to do a bit of a crash course in refamiliarising myself with farming. And so I enrolled myself in a Masters of Agribusiness so that I could help run the business. I became a sponge to all things that my dad and others around me could teach me about growing pasture, about animal husbandry, about managing a vineyard, about attaching bloody big bits of machinery to tractors. And among a whole lot of other things being added to the toolkit, I started attending short courses and conferences, and I also chose to become a member of Sustainable Winegrowing Australia. I was finding that there was a real lack of grower-centric information and ways for me to have a voice as a grower, and certainly as a grower, a way to find granular data about what we were contributing and having an impact in the decision making around what we do as a grape grower. So for me, Sustainable Winegrowing Australia was an opportunity to access information, access resources, and become part of that broader wine ecosystem, and make sure that I had a voice within there and understood what others were talking about as well in the industry that I work within. The other thing that I found with the Sustainable Winegrowing program was that it was a really easy way for me to help wade through the alphabet soup of acronyms that exist. So words like ESG, and as mentioned earlier by both Anna and Liz, ESG certainly has tendrils that span entire supply chains across the globe. It's become a ticket to trade in many industries. We're seeing it in our beef that we're selling as well, and the wine industry is also one of those. On farm here, as per my slide, we take a real interest in just observing our land. We're farmers at heart. We always have been. My grandfather, my father, and now me. And we really make sure that we're watching what we do on farm from the ground up. And that includes bird life, insects, pasture, soil, grapes, animals. And it's taking an interest in what they do and what they look like. With that, I'm able to apply that into programs like Sustainable Winegrowing, and incorporate that into being a credential for selling my grapes. Come on, slide. There we go. Sustainable Winegrowing Australia also opened up a whole lot of resources and information for me. It became a bit of a network, and it gave me the courage to seek out other programs that might be able to assist me with crunching some data and working out exactly what we do here on farm. We've got a really great program in the Yarra Valley here called Ribbons of Green, and that was able to help support an existing thing that we had going on Yarrawalla, which was allocating about 15% of our property to re-veg and biodiversity projects. And that Ribbons of Green program was fantastic. They were able to help supply trees and shrubs and grasses for that planting, and we're now well over 20,000 of those planted, probably in the last 30 years, I suppose. Those trees and shrubs and grasses have become insectariums for our vineyards and for pastures. We use them as shelter belts for our livestock. Some of the other things that we've implemented at Yarrawalla, and this has been prompted directly from the Sustainable Winegrowing program, are things like signing up to eBird, which is logging all of the bird species on our property, and that gets uploaded to BirdLife Australia. And it's also kind of encouraged me, sometimes forcefully and sometimes voluntarily, to get involved in industry networks and programs. We try and be involved with university projects like the Blue Carbon Project through Deakin Uni. We're involved in other farm emissions pilot programs through AgVic and MLA. You know, and for us, it's just been an opportunity to help tick some of the boxes that we know we're doing great things already, and it's just helping to give those a name. We focus on waterways and dams here at Yarrawalla, not just the land, and we look for little ways that we can make changes. So some of this picture here is a dam in the middle of our vineyard, and we've made a real effort to make sure that we're adding them to our biodiversity and re-veg program as well. In terms of grassroots level being part of SWA, I need to fess up, I'm a member. I've been a member of Sustainable Winegrowing Australia since 2019, as I mentioned. For me, it was a benchmarking mechanism and a way to be included in information flow. I'm not yet certified. I will do that if and when it becomes compulsory for me, and we can have a discussion later on about the reasoning behind that. But for me, it's a super valuable tool for benchmarking in a place that I otherwise find really difficult to access information. So for me, looking at things like our production metrics, seeing how much of our fruit, you know, represents the Chardonnay in the Yarra Valley, for instance, of member growers within this program. It helps me look at my diesel use. It helps me look at vineyard data compared to my own previous years. It helps me compare to others of similar size in other regions as well. So what's in it for Yarrawalla? I can't emphasise enough, in my belief, how important collaboration and knowledge share is. If you want to contribute to and gain from the industries that you're part of, you have to pitch in, and that's always been my philosophy. I think having a strong sustainable wine growing presence through each level of the wine sector will help ensure integrity and the ability to respond to those ESG requirements. But I also think it's a really good way, as I've mentioned, for those of us that are working on the land in really isolated spaces to have access to information. It helps put a magnifying glass over the social, economic and environmental footprint of our business. It gives us access to the innovative resource and practices that I might not otherwise find in my own day-to-day Googling. It helps us benchmark against other business, and it helps identify areas where we can improve. But one of the things I've found best is that it gives us a tick of approval for things that we're already doing really well. And that for me, you know, is a nice bit of feedback that we otherwise wouldn't get. Ultimately, Sustainable Winegrowing Australia membership and or accreditation is street cred. And we know that we're hearing it more and more that to trade, particularly on the international market, we need to have ESG credentials, and this is our industry's way of ticking that box. So, you know, I'm all in for the moment. It's a really pretty cheap and easy way for someone else to be crunching my data and spitting out pretty pictures for me to look at and work out where my business sits in the industry. I believe a critical mass around programs like this is what we need at the moment. And, you know, those that know me will hear me prattle on about the wine ecosystem, because I firmly believe that without one thing, the other thing falls down. And I really want farmers to be at the table talking about strategy and policy. And this is my way to help do that, so that I know what my numbers are, what the rest of the industry is talking about, and where I sit. Hopefully I've come in under the 10 minutes. My contact details are here. I'm a cool climate wine grower, so I can only talk about the things that I know here out of the Yarra, but as I said, happy to answer questions. My contact details are on the screen if anyone wants to make contact.
Thanks, Lucy. That was great. 8 minutes. Perfect. There hasn't been any questions directly come through to you at this point in time. I'll just remind everyone, if they want to send one through, more than welcome. Lucy, Anna, Marty, and our next speakers will be available at the end of the presentations to answer some questions. So we'll move on to our last presenters today. It's going to be a co-presentation from both Rod Harrison and Amanda Flynn from Yering Station in the Yarra Valley. Rod joined the Yering Station in 2014 as vineyard manager, and has progressed through in 2019 to the chief viticulturist since then. And Amanda Flynn is also at Yering Station as one of the experienced winemakers and has been with Yering for the last 2 years. So if you're both ready to go, I'll get you to share your screen and hand over to
Oh, yeah. We good?
I think so.
Good,
Hello?
Matt?
Why isn't it coming up?
I can see it. Oh, sorry, no, you've just got your. You just stop sharing and then go back and share again. Yep, I can see it now.
Okay.
All good, Matt?
All good.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, Rod Harrison here from Nearing Station and Amanda Flynn. So thanks for having us. We had a bit of a get-together on sustainable wine growing in the Yarra a couple of weeks ago. So I think Marty's got us to come along and kind of give a basic, I suppose, talk on going through that process. So we've been members of FreshCare since 2018, and we started having the discussion on going through the audit in 2020. We're family owned, and there's another couple of wineries attached with us, which is Xanadu over in Margaret River and Mount Langi in the Grampians. Xanadu has been certified sustainable since 2018 when we joined FreshCare itself. So there was a bit of pressure on us from the family for Yering and Mount Langi to go through the same process. They are very passionate about being sustainable and putting back more than what we take out of it. So that was the whole kick on. We kind of obviously with COVID and I had every excuse under the sun being short-staffed, kind of put it off for a couple of years. I just, we received the big folder that everyone gets and it was quite overwhelming. So we did, I kind of just kept putting it off until Mount Langi really got their heads around it and kicked off. And that was my challenge then to get this thing over and done with. So we started the process. Once we started, we really did realise that we had everything required to go through the audit anyway. It was about kind of compiling it and getting all our information together. We really do, and I think everyone else would find that they are practicing everything sustainable anyway. We're not out there driving tractors for no reason and burning diesel. We're not, flying around putting sprays on for no reason at all. So we quickly realised that this was going to be an easy process, and the audit at the end of the day was a brilliant thing to go through. The vineyard, we kind of split departments. So vineyard and winery chose to kind of part and go through the process themselves. I did the vineyard stuff with my right-hand man, and we ended up going page for page on the book itself, and we did a lot of manual writing and things like that. And it was great for us when we went through the audit itself. We literally just presented that same folder back, and we passed with flying colours at the end of the day. And the winery sort of chose to go down a different road.
Yeah. So everything that you get in the folders, you can also get in a digital format. So we just kind of wanted to explain to you the two different ways that we approach the certification. So with the winery, we use the digital forms because we found, or what I found when I took over the certification was we were working really hard on it for a month or two, and then as we all do, we'd get distracted by harvest or pruning, and we wouldn't see it again for a couple of months, and we'd feel like we were starting again. We're having to go back through everything that we'd kind of got the certificates and stuff for. So once we set up a system where we could see that we'd actually finished certain areas and we'd completed it, we were moving through the certification a lot quicker. So I think the easiest way for us to show you is just to actually show you what we built. So it's just on a Teams program. When you do your certification, you'll have your environment section and your management section. And then all of those sections have different requirements. So, for example, in our management section where we have our property maps and our commitment statements and organisational charts, this is kind of the area where we can see we've completed all of those. And moving across to all of our training certifications, that was again a pretty easy thing to put together. It was just everything that the staff had on hand. And then SOPs, things that took a little bit more time was building procedures and our fire management and those kind of spill procedures and risk procedures. We used AI for a lot of those SOPs. So if you are handy with AI and you want to move through some of the stuff a little bit quicker, that was really handy for us. And the other thing that was really beneficial for this is that all of the team was able to see it, and different team members had different responsibilities. So for instance, with our chemical inventory, this was under our lab manager's responsibility. So all of his chemical registers and stuff were uploaded onto here. A lot of you already have a lot of this information in the winery or in your vineyard. So we weren't rewriting anything that we already had. If we already had that information, it was just uploaded into our SWA. If there were parts that were missing, then we were using the SWA forms and filling out what was required for the different sections. So John is responsible for this part, and then we can put timers on. Oh, where did we go? We've lost the thing. We can put, like this has to be reviewed every year. So we've got an alarm on this to make sure that we review all of our chemical use. So the other thing we wanted to talk to you about was our sustainability action plan. Because that was a thing that seemed really daunting at the start of the SWA. It was like, well, we know we've got to focus on everything, but what do we actually want to focus on? We were told to keep it simple. So for both the winery and the vineyard, we've focused on water. And then Rod will tell you about big changes that we made once we started focusing on that.
Yeah, we went with the vineyard side chose water and energy saving. That's our action plan. Once, when like Lucy showed you before, she, it's the benchmarking is brilliant with the fresh care side of things. And it was definitely, I could see we were lacking in, we were spending way too much time and effort in irrigating. So I kind of used this audit process as a tool to get through some automation at yearing. In a fairly warm season like 2019, it was common for me to do about 1,000 kilometres a week in a Hilux, burning diesel, turning taps on and off, and irrigating. And all this obviously is done during the day because no one wants to be here at night time if they don't have to be. So that was my biggest, I suppose, saving was having yearing automated. We irrigate at night now. We're not driving around from block to block, and that will be the process moving forward. We have 5 farms, so all 5 farms eventually will be all automated, saving water, irrigating at night, and also power, irrigating at night.
Yep, and within the winery, so for us looking at water, it was really simple changes that have had a really big effect on our use. So it was breaking down our SOPs for cleaning our tanks and actually seeing how much volume was required for all the different tank volumes. And then also obviously looking at the chemical use to clean those tanks effectively. It was looking at barrel sanitation, so washing barrels and steaming, and actually just putting timers onto our washers and our steamers, especially when we have the vintage crew on, who we have to train quite quickly in these compressed seasons. So having this kind of set out for them and knowing that that was a standard of procedure had a massive effect. And then another thing we looked at was bringing in a steaming attachment to the tanks, so that rather than having to use caustic for those really heavy tartrate tanks, we were utilising steam to clean those. So 3 really simple things that we've put into place that have started us onto our SWA. And then going forward, we know for the winery, the next thing for us will be looking at our refrigeration and how we can rework our refrigeration units and possibly long-term look at getting a heat room. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think to wrap up, you know, the Fresh Care workbook, it's a brilliant tool. I highly encourage that, but also, you know, when you decide to go down the SWA and go through that audit, you'll get the book. Please don't get overwhelmed. Just take your time. But I highly encourage doing it. It's been an amazing process for us. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and your auditors are great. We had a lady called Jane, who we had everything laid out. If you can have it in a system, it doesn't have to look like this, but something that's quite centralized, whether it's like a bunch of manila folders that are marked off or like files on your computer, so that when you sit down with your auditor, when they ask to see something, you can pull that up for them quite quickly. And then once you go through the audit day, you'll get a list back from the auditor that has where maybe you have your holes in the what you need to report, and then you have a couple of weeks to get that information back to the auditor. So they very much want you to pass, and they're not here like trying to make fun of what you're doing or try to make you feel bad because of the way that you're presenting it to them. It's just very much trying to help you get through the certification.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rod and Amanda. That was good. That was a great practical insight into how you're actually using the sustainability credential. That's fantastic. Look, just before we go on to some questions, there's been a few questions come through. There's been a couple for Lucy, and there's been some for Rod and also for Marty. I'll just want to launch another poll. So you'll see a 1-question survey pop up on your screen. I'm just asking you now how to rate your knowledge of this topic since you've then attended the webinar. So. Okay, first one for you, Lucy. I'll just read it out. It's from Leanne. Great stuff, Lucy. Really good to hear firsthand value of this of Sustainable Winegrowing Australia to your business and how you approached it. What was the main reason for not pursuing certification audit just of yet?
Thanks for the question, Leanne. Look, if I'm being brutally honest, we don't have that bottled product value add of a brand stamp for us yet. So for me, I'm getting a fair whack of the benefit out of the program as a member, as a grower. Sorry, I've got roosters in the background here. When the wineries that I sell to encourage me firmly, which they are beginning to do, I will. I'm ready. I'm a little bit resource poor here. We're a family operation and I can only spread myself so far. So it tends to go to the bottom of the work list. I've recruited one of my university aged children to come and help pull together the paperwork that's required for the audit. So we're ready to go. I've sat through the workshops and I'm very much prepared to press go on it. But at the minute, the benefits for me are coming out of being a member. And when I need to get certified, absolutely. The things we're doing are ready for certifying anyway.
Okay, maybe just to follow on, there's another one here about, can you tell us a little bit more about the Yarra Valley project and how it benefited your region, and if there's any advice to other regions, how they can work together?
Yep. Yeah, look, we've been really fortunate. I'm assuming they're referring to the Ribbons of Green program, which is a Yarra Ranges Council project. If anyone wants the lead on that, to give a call and talk that through. But basically they utilise local nurseries and they deal with Indigenous species, and it's fantastic. We get a list of all the species we're planting, their uses, insects that like them, their Indigenous use on land. And for us, it's just a really excellent tool of knowledge that, you know, we have to obviously input fencing off areas and the labour to do that. We've in the past used that for social exercises. A lot of big corporates like to come out and have a tree planting day. If you ask my children, they'll tell you that they're planting on school holidays in the rain. But yeah, look, that kind of initiative is really great. And as I mentioned when I was talking, getting in contact with those groups that really often exist in the first place, but you don't know until you go and seek them out. Universities are another really good one. So the Blue Carbon project we're involved with, looking at carbon uptake with dams when there's livestock around them or not. They're coming out and doing the work, and they're feeding back really interesting information to me. Same with the subsoil project we're involved with, Meat and Livestock Australia, and that is all applicable across our property. So, when you can collaborate with other organisations, it really does lighten the workload for me, and helps me understand my property better and apply it into different parts of my business for on-selling meat or grapes or accommodation.
Okay. There's an interesting question here. Is Sustainable Winegrowing Australia working to tie into carbon reporting to the Australian government as of vintage 2026? Is that one for you, Marty, do you think?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer it. We're not directly reporting anything through to the government, so all of the data that we collect through Sustainable Winegrowing stays within the program, and the only people that access that data are the people here at AWRI, and it is completely confidential. What we do is aggregate that data together, and we sometimes do it regionally, and we also do it nationally. But back to the specific question about carbon reporting, the data that every member reports through is linked to Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions data. So the data that members report through goes through the Australian Wine Carbon Calculator, gets converted into emissions, and then every member gets access to their emissions summaries and profiles. So you might have remembered that slide that Lucy showed before. That was her dashboard that showed her emissions over the different years. So that's currently there, and that's available to all members. We're now actually working on a project with Agriculture Innovation Australia, and we're looking to harmonise our calculator with other Australian agricultural greenhouse gas calculators, and we're also looking to integrate Scope 3 emissions. So we're hoping that that will be available to all members next year.
Okay, this one might be for Rod and Amanda. Great to hear firsthand experiences and tools you've developed to help with adopting Sustainable Winegrowing Australia. Question is, how did you go with getting everyone on board? A work culture related query.
I think we're quite a small scaled team, I suppose. There's only, about 4 or 5 in the winery full time, and the same in the vineyard. So we're quite a tight little team. And I think once we started, it was all about being open about it and discussing it. And then once we started that folder, we were talking more about it in the staff room and things like that. And all our staff were realising we are actually practicing it, and it's something they've been interested in anyway. So the culture has been brilliant. The other side of it too, outside of here, I spoke briefly about that seminar we had here the other day with some local wineries and growers. The feedback I'm getting from that has been amazing. That was a really good little few hours that we had in the barn here, and I may even next week catching up with a few other growers to chat more about it. I'm sort of happy to help anyone that wants to have a look at what we do and how we've run it. Do you agree with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we got a lot of help from Mount Langi when we were doing it. So the more information that can be shared from the wineries that have been through the process, doesn't have to be the same size. I think it's going to be better for everybody.
Yeah.
Can I just add in on that same vein of conversation, and it ties in with a question earlier about literacy issues as well. From a small farming perspective, when you've got older generations, this program's been a really useful tool to grab information from my father, for instance, who would look at this kind of program and go, too much computer, I don't want to be part of that. But it's been a great tool for grabbing information and dropping it into a space that I know and I'm able to contribute to. So in terms of workplace culture, it can have lots of employees, or it can be a family base like us, and it's actually been a really good, useful tool in that way to help everyone from different generations and interests participate.
There's been another question, I think, towards Rod and Amanda. Did you certify the winery and vineyards at the same time, and was the audit during or outside vintage operations?
Yeah, we did. We had Jane booked in on the same day, so we sort of split it. I think that we did the vineyard in the first 4 hours, and that was all 5 vineyards were done. And then she went down into the winery and did that. We actually did it in December. We found, November, December worked best for us. I know the vineyards are busy then with spray programs and things like that, but it really only was two of us from the vineyard and the winery that went through the process on the day. It really didn't tie up any staff time at all.
Okay, and I think this one's for both Lucy and Rod and Amanda. Are either of our case study businesses part of the Eco Vineyards? And if so, do they find it easy to value add to the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia via this?
I'm not a member Vineyard of Eco Vineyards, but I attend regularly when workshops are available and have utilised the Eco Vineyards resources quite readily. The more we get involved at our level here, we're still looking for resources in that Eco Vineyard system that are applicable to cool, cold climate growing like we are. So the more people we have involved feeding back into that system, the more information we get. So yes, they both feed off each other. They're both useful for each other. And lots of the things that we already do on farm apply to both. Yeah.
Oh, Rod, you just off.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, totally agree with Lucy. Same thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, look, there hasn't been any more come through, but if they do, we'll farm them out to the presenters and get a written response, and we'll send that out when we send the YouTube link. So look, that's all we really have for today. So I'd just like again to thank Anna, Liz, Marty, Lucy, Rod and Amanda for sharing and providing insights into different aspects of sustainability and sustainability practices. I'm sure everyone who attended today got a lot out of it, and I hope they did. I'd also like to thank the audience for logging in and taking part today, and remind you that, as always, you will receive a link in the next couple of days with a recording of this presentation, which will be available on the Adabrise YouTube channel as well. So thank you all again, and I look forward to seeing you at the next Adabrise webinar.